Welcome to a first look at Heroic Nythendra, one of the first bosses you will encounter in the Emerald Nightmare raid instance. Nythendra is a simple and straightforward alternating two-phase fight with very few abilities to worry about. Phase 1, the Plagued Dreamer. In her first phase, Nythendra has 6 abilities to handle, most of which deal plague damage to the raid. These abilities are Infested, Infested Ground, Infested Breath, Rot, Volatile Rot, and Tail Lash. This phase lasts a little under 2 minutes. Let's get into some more depth on these abilities. Infested. Players hit with any form of plague damage that inflicts players with a stacking debuff, dealing 10,000 plague damage per stack. It's worth noting that after Nythendra completes her Phase 2 ability, Heart of the Swarm, all stacks of Infested are removed. Infested Ground. Nythendra will create pools of corruption on the ground, inflicting 100,000 plague damage every 1.5 seconds to players in its area. Infested Breath. Nythendra will turn to a random raid member and breathe in a frontal cone, inflicting heavy plague damage every second for 5 seconds. The breath will also spawn puddles of infested ground. Rot. Inflicts heavy plague damage to all allies within 8 yards every 3 seconds for 9 seconds. Upon expiration, the rot will burst from the target and create additional puddles of infested ground. Tail Lash. Like all classic dragon encounters, Nythendra has a tail swipe ability that will deal moderate physical damage, as well as knock back any players that find themselves in a cone behind her. Volatile Rot. This is a tank-centered mechanic. Nythendra's current target will be inflicted with a debuff that deals up to 1.25 million plague damage to all allies after 8 seconds. Allies further from the explosion take reduced damage. Additionally, this effect will cause more puddles of infested ground to spawn. So, to deal with the constant spawns of infested ground, you should tank Nythendra on the outer edge of the room, and as the fight progresses, slowly move her around the room to ensure you always have room to deal with additional spawns of infested ground. Now, the tanks will have to taunt swap on every stack of Volatile Rot and then run away from the raid, so they actively reduce the amount of damage the raid takes from the explosion. Nythendra has an energy bar that is best used as an indicator for her Infested Breath and her phase transition. When Nythendra casts Infected Breath, she'll lose 50 energy. After Nythendra casts Infected Breath 2 times, she will hit 0 energy and transition into her second phase. Phase 2, Heart of the Swarm. In this intermission, Nythendra will utilize 2 abilities that are exclusive to this phase, which are Heart of the Swarm and Burst of Corruption. Heart of the Swarm. This ability will happen 3 times before she transitions back into Phase 1. At 0 energy, Nythendra will stop where she is and begin a 20-second channel. During this channel, you'll notice that unattackable insects will spawn all over the floor in Nythendra's encounter room. During her channel, she will periodically cause an insect to swell and cast Burst of Corruption. These insects have no health value and are merely indicators of where Burst of Corruption can take place. Burst of Corruption. Burst will inflict moderate plague damage to all players within 8 yards. In addition, being hit by Burst of Corruption will leave players with a debuff that increases damage taken by burst by 75% for 5 seconds, and it's worth noting the effect stacks. Once Nythendra transitions into Phase 2, the raid is free to spread out in a circle around the boss, since none of her Phase 1 abilities are active. Spreading in this way will make it easier for the raid to dodge Burst of Corruption. After Nythendra completes Heart of the Swarm, she'll transition back into Phase 1, and the fight will continue on, swapping phases until you've killed her. As we mentioned earlier, this fight is a very simple and straightforward one. It's much like the other first bosses in previous raid tiers, a short and sweet combination check. Hopefully, you'll be on your way to a one-shot the first time you encounter Nythendra.
We hope you've enjoyed this guide brought to you by Icy Veins, and as always, we wish you the best of luck in your raiding endeavors. If you like this video, feel free to check out our other guides and remember to subscribe in order to stay updated on all of our newest releases. And you can find all relevant information in the description below.